Olight has introduced a new right-angle light with the Perun. The name comes from the Slavic god of thunder. The Perun makes some kind of odd design choices from the fairly popular Olight H2R it logically replaces, and I'll go through those during this review. Thanks to Skybin on Amazon for sending this to me to take a look at and review. This will probably be a little bit longer review, so grab your favorite cold or hot beverage, sit back, and enjoy. As a reminder, if you're not following me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those social media sites, make sure you do look up the channel and follow there. I think it's fair to say Olight might just have the nicest packaging in the production flashlight world, and one wonders what it adds to the cost of a light. Here in front of me I've got the Perun box. It's got the light on the front. On the back we've got some overview, features, and then specifications. The box is a magnetic closure, and you can hear that here. Inside the light here sits in this nice foam. You get a box filled with accessories. You get a little tool here to help you put the lanyard through the light. You get the recharging system, you get the lanyard itself and the instruction manual, and you get this nice little yellow card here that tells you what to do, how to get started, to remove the protective film, how to charge, and then it gives you a few warnings here that I'll get into, but it tells you to keep the lens clean and to protect it from scratches from the sensor. The pocket clip comes attached here on the light, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. This is the new MCC charger. It is faster at 1.5 to 2 amps of charging speed. In this light, it charges at 1.5 amps. And then here is the battery it comes with. This is a 3500 milliamp hour, 18650, and it's high discharge, good for 10 amps. By default, no head strap is included with the light, but it does come with one here. And this is an optional accessory. Some sellers are bundling it with the light, as Skybin does, but it fits the H2R and the pre-run. If you've got the H2R headlamp, it's basically the same headband. The design on the side is slightly different. It's a nice over-the-head design as well as on the side. The mount here itself is magnetic and does hold the light in place. And it does work with the pocket clip attached, although Olight does recommend you remove it. You stretch it on and attach it over the latch here. And that brings up one point here that I'd like to make about this design. This body here is fairly aggressive, and if you're adjusting it from the body side, not a problem. But if you're adjusting it from the head side, depending on how tightly you've got it screwed on, you can end up just turning the head and not the body itself. Not a huge deal, but it is not my favorite design. The Olight Perun is made from black anodized aluminum as expected. The body and tail cap are all one piece like we saw on the Baton Pro. And while similar in design, these two are not the same. The cubes on the Perun are much larger and the tips are still in place. They're not milled off. I think this is an attractive design. I like it. It's fairly aggressive, but it interferes with that headband as I explained just a little bit. The head here is a head and collar design. The pocket clip only attaches on the headpiece. It doesn't attach on the body section at all. And that's one thing I don't like here is if you're going to EDC this like in your pocket, like I do occasionally with the Olight H2R here, it leaves about 20 millimeters of the light sticking out of the top. And for me, that's just way too much. I could see someone clipping this on a vest or backpack strap possibly, and for that it'd be fine. On top of the light, you see a large silicon button here, surrounded by an Olight blue bezel. It's set at just a bit of an angle here, so the light won't actually tail stand, it'll fall over from being top heavy. It is slightly domed. This nice big button does work with your gloves pretty well. On the sides here we've got some ribbing for style and some heat dissipation. On the front here we've got a blue bezel. It's got a large plastic lens. You can see that LED in there pretty nicely. And then at the very top, we've got that IR sensor. If you look at it from the top here, you can see kind of a channel to aim light in at that sensor. It's kind of an interesting design. I measured the length of the Perun at 112 millimeters, maximum diameter at the head at 25 millimeters, minimum diameter at the body and tail at 23 millimeters. Weight with the included battery and clip came in at 115.7 grams. The natural competitor here is the Olight H2R. I reviewed this a long time ago when it first came out. I measured the length of the H2R at 110 millimeters, maximum diameter at the head at 25.3, minimum diameter on the body at 20 millimeters, and weight of the H2R with the battery and clip came in at 109 grams. So overall, the H2R is just a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. If I compare the Perun to the Nikkor HC35, which I'll be reviewing in the coming weeks, we can see the HC35 is a significantly larger light. That's due to the 21700 battery and the 4 LEDs it's using. So not really the greatest comparison. It's also significantly brighter in turbo by about twice as much, but gives you kind of an idea of the size of the Perun. Unfortunately, Olight has not really said officially what LED is inside the Perun. I can tell you that it looks like a quad package and is a fairly large domed emitter. My guess is it's the Cree XHP 50.2 LED. The tint here is pretty cool white, easily 6500 Kelvin or above, and the beam pattern here is all flood with no real hot spot at a distance thanks to that TIR optic. When I compare it to my neutral white H2R, which we'll see in my night shots here shortly, the big thing I noticed was tint, and second thing I noticed was beam angle. While both lights are all flood, the Perun is a little wider and less throwy. Olight rates them at 12 meters difference in throw, and to the eye that's really difficult to see. The IR sensor here doesn't seem to change the beam pattern, which is a good thing. Okay, here are my night shots for the Olight Perun. Starting off in moonlight mode, 5 lumens with the Perun. Quite a bit brighter than what we normally expect from a moonlight mode. This light is running a Cree XHP 50.2 LED. Bumping up, here is low at 30 lumens. Good idea of the beam shape, it's mostly a flood. Bumping up again to medium, 120 lumens. Nice shot of my deck here as we pan up. We can start to see it's really floody. Here is high at 500 lumens. Not the brightest light out there on high, but remember this is a headlamp primarily. So if we pan back down at the deck, this is a lot of working light, and this has got about a 3-hour runtime. So not bad. And if we go up to turbo, here is 2000 lumens. We can see how floody it is. You can see the trees into the neighbor's backyard. And we can see this is really a cool white flashlight. On my left here is the Perun running in medium mode, cool white, about 120 lumens. And on my right here is the Olight H2R, neutral white, running in medium mode, 140 lumens. I wanted to show the huge difference in tint, and then I'll show beam pattern here. Here is the Perun, and then here is the M2R. Here is the Perun beam shot in turbo, 2000 lumens. And here is the H2R, neutral white, and also in turbo, 2000 lumens. And we can see what a difference that is in beam. It's still floody, but just a little bit narrow flood. Here again is the Perun. It's a bigger flood and huge difference in that cool white. Olight has recently started putting a runtime progression kind of in their manual here, as we can see, and I think that's something they should be commended for. Too many manufacturers just rate their lights as, they'd say turbo, good for 50 minutes or whatever, when in reality, it's good for 2.5 minutes and steps down. And that's very honest of Olight to rate their lights actually how they perform. For my own runtime test, I tested with the included battery, and turbo mode was good for only 2.5 minutes, and then it started to step down to about 55% relative output, where it ran for about 10 minutes, and then saw one more major step down to about 35% relative output, ran for about 90 minutes or so. We saw 3 more major step downs over the next 60 minutes before the light ran into moonlight mode and then low voltage protection kicked in. The total runtime was just 165 minutes. Heat was pretty well controlled. The hottest I saw in my runtime tests were 104 degrees Fahrenheit at the 5-minute mark. Official runtime output modes are the following: moonlight at 5 lumens, low at 30 lumens, medium at 120 lumens, high at 50 lumens, turbo at 2000. My comment on mode spacing here is that there's a huge difference between 500 lumens and 2000 lumens on turbo, and while I'd prefer something a little bit in the middle, the benefit is that high mode could sustain itself without stepping down for 3 hours. I'll insert some shots here of my PWM tests. I really didn't find anything with my scope, and my eye certainly doesn't detect anything, so that's a nice thing to see. The Perun has the standard Olight UI that many of us has come to know and like, with slow fades between on and off. From off, long press to activate mood mode, and you get 5 lumens here, unfortunately, instead of a 1 or half a lumen. Turn on to normal modes, single click, and then just hold to progress through the 5 modes. Double click to go to turbo, triple click to go to strobe, and it's a kind of slow strobe on the Perun. The light also features memory mode for the normal mode. The light also has lockout mode. Personally, I just give the light a little bit of a twist, because once it breaks contact, the light shuts off. I think that's easier and frankly safer to use. The light also features timer modes for 3 and 9 minutes. So the thing that's different about the Perun is this black IR sensor you see here, and I can demonstrate with this dollar bill here. So I've got it on turbo here, and as I get closer, the light detects it's close to something and steps down an output. I've got the camera locked in exposure so you can see that, and it works at a varying degree of angles and distances. I found it's most sensitive straight on. If I come at this from a top angle here, you can see how much closer the dollar bill has to get before it shuts off. And when it does step down, it's good for 30 lumens, and if held past the 60-second mark, the light will completely shut off. I thought I would take this opportunity to show the IR sensor. We can see as we're coming down, getting closer, it's still on at full power, and there it dimmed, and we're about an inch off the deck there. And if I come back out, it brightens up. And if I come in at a more steep angle, we can see that it's much closer. I'm maybe about half an inch or a quarter of an inch here that it detects the wood and comes on and off. Camera exposure is locked here through this. Olight warns in the manual you need to keep the lens clean and scratch free, or it could affect the output of the light. If the lens is really scratched up, it's gonna not work very well, and frankly you couldn't get it above 30 lumens. There's no way to disable this in the UI, and for that I think is a fatal flaw. In practice, I found this interesting to use and experiment with, and a little bit gimmicky. Lighter color objects does seem to make the light output drop when further away, about 3 or 4 inches, where darker objects made the light distance go much shorter, maybe 1 inch or less. Angle of attack seemed to matter too. It worked when distances were greater if the light was straight on 90 degrees to that sensor, but if it was at an angle, you could get things a lot closer. Overall, I'm just not really a fan of this IR sensor here when you can electronically or mechanically lock out the light instead. I see the thought process behind including something like this, as you see people on forums burning holes in their jackets or pants with high-powered flashlights, sometimes on accident. But I think the design flaw in this instance is that there's no way to turn this off in the UI. A scratch on the lens or a dusty or super rainy environment reduces the light output substantially and potentially even shuts it off after 60 seconds. Overall, I'm just not a fan of this feature when you can electronically or mechanically lock the light out easily instead. The light is using Olight's proprietary magnetic charging system here. Other than needing to use a proprietary battery to make this work, I don't have a lot of complaints with it. Since speeding it up, it seems to work fairly well. They say that this light won't charge with previous chargers. I didn't find that to be the case. It did work for me, but they recommend using the charger that comes in the box, so that's what I'll be using. Something that is kind of refreshing to see here is that Olight in the manual mentions you can use a standard 18650 battery here that is button top. And I use this through night cell, and it worked just fine on turbo, no problem. You do lose the ability to charge the light via the magnetic charging system here, but it works just fine. I can go to turbo, no problems at all. So that's really a nice touch that Olight has allowed you to use a standard battery if you so choose. With other recent Olights like the M2R Pro, they strictly allow you to use the proprietary cell. Charging the included 3500 milliamp hour battery was accomplished with the new MCC1A charger. I saw charge times take 4 hours and from low voltage protection at 2.88 volts and terminated at 4.17 volts. No voltage was detected at the tail cap and no charging speed issues were observed. The pros for me are that you do not need a proprietary battery for this light to run, but you do need one still for charging. Those standard button top 18650s will work with this light. I think this is an overall attractive design. The headband is good if you purchase it. High mode sustains itself for 3 hours, but it's only good for 500 lumens and a little more runtime than the older H2R, and it can sustain itself for longer, and I think that's mainly due to the slightly larger capacity battery. The cons for me are making the head strap an optional extra. The clip doesn't make for a practical EDC due to how much the light sticks up from your pocket, in my opinion. There's no neutral white emitter option and no true moonlight mode here of 1 lumen or less. No glass lens placed over the plastic TIR, meaning it's susceptible to scratches, which can impact the performance of the IR sensor and potentially making it only work in low. And no settings to turn off the IR or proximity sensor. My conclusion, the Perun is just kind of an odd mix of what seems like a step backwards combined with small upgrades that don't really matter that much for actual use. The result is a light that in my opinion isn't really that much better than the model it logically is set to replace with the Olight H2R, which I was a fan of, allowing a higher capacity battery to be used. It's also nice to see them mention in the manual that normal button top 18650s work here, but won't charge in the light. The IR sensor to me seems kind of like a gimmick. It isn't very practical in an EDC front pocket like the H2R was, or as other right angle headlamps are like the Armitech Elf or Wizard. So dimming when something is near isn't super needed here. I could see it being useful to throw it in a bag and it wouldn't come on and accidentally melt something, but we have electronic and mechanical lockout for those two, which in my opinion is easier and more reliable and doesn't potentially compromise the design of the light if it were dirty or scratched. The aggressive texture on the body is nice, looks good, and it makes the light and headlamp a little bit harder to use in the mount in my opinion. Admittedly, these are mostly things enthusiasts care about. If you hand the Olight Perun to a non-enthusiast, they're going to think it's a great product. It's bright, comfortable, attractively designed, easy to use, bright, but for many enthusiasts, I think there are probably better choices. Mine's going to go to a family member who is in need of a headlamp who doesn't really care about these things. For them, this will be a nice fit. So with that said, let me know in the comments if you think this is the right headlamp for you and if you'd be interested in picking one up. As always, guys, thanks for watching these videos. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer any questions if you have them. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like this video as it continues to help me make videos like this for you. Thanks.